So, as you know, the local elections are coming up. And in particular, because these are going to be the, well, probably the last local elections before the next general election, these are going to be a very, very big test and probably used as an indicator about what will happen at the next general election. So, especially expect that us going into any potential next general election, like this local election, will be highly used, highly sourced, looked at in microscopic detail to go, this is what might happen in a general election. This is what we might expect. And this is certainly parties. Labour is using this as a test run to try out their general election promises. So this will almost certainly dictate the direction that Labour go in. I think it will certainly dictate the areas that the Lib Dems will focus in. Certainly at the next general election, they are really putting a lot of focus down on the blue wall, the traditional sort of conservative heartlands, and we have seen in by-elections, they have been able to win big. Now, of course, we've got to remember, those are by-elections. But as we have said, certainly you've had farmers turning against Conservatives because of them, well, basically destroying British farming. And like I say, these trade deals aren't going well. Like I say, we're expecting potentially a full-fledged rebellion led by none other than Grant Shapps, potentially in the near future, on these on these trade deals. So that's certainly something we're watching out for on the horizon. But this is going to hurt them electorally because we're seeing farmers switch. We're seeing people invested in sort of rural areas also make the switch because they're recognizing the damage that is doing to their local area as well. So we're seeing that happen. We're also seeing a lot of very disenfranchised conservatives, very sort of people who think that don't really want to vote for a party. Like I say, we've seen a loss of about 10%, especially in the Red Wall. That is very crucial. That is why Lee Anderson got put in his position, because they wanted to put him in a position where they hope that him being there might at least try to galvanize that lost 10% that they've seen, well, lost, that they might try to bring them out again. So especially expect probably in a couple of weeks' time, certainly Lee Anderson to probably make a lot of appearances up in and around the north to try and push the Conservative vote out, to try and sort of reclaim that lost 10%. But today, we're looking at an electoral analysis on this to have a look at an expert, what he says potentially could be the results of these local elections, what he thinks, how this might affect the next, obviously, upcoming election. So I think, as always, these are pretty important. And as I said, this result will have a very, very big impact on the next general election, potentially, depending on how bad this goes. And of course, the reaction, of course, to how bad this general election or how bad this local election might go could, and I say could, trigger a general election. Because if the Tories see that they have done so badly, then they will be like, why are we putting this off any longer? Just, for God's sake, Sunak, put us out of our misery. Because remember, Sunak was put in there to try and stop the Tory electoral calamity they can all see a mile away from coming. And trust me, if these votes at the local election, as they look like, going to go very bad, there is going to be an almighty panic from the Conservative Party. No matter how much they might try and spin it, what might be coming for them after these local election results could be very, very bad and start a massive panic in the party. So Let's have a look at what this expert has to say, what he thinks might happen. But before that, please do remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee. And of course, as always, thank you very much for all the support you guys show. And of course, there's the Pony Club, the YouTube thank you button, also down below as well. So let's crack on into this. So this is from the Independent with the title of "Why These Local Elections Matter and What Results to Expect." So, of course, plays out all these sort of what's up for grabs. There's, to be honest, a lot of things up for grabs. There's 9 metropolitan boroughs up for grabs, 32 Unitarian authorities, including cities such as Nottingham, Derby, and York. And of course, 1/3 of all seats are up for grabs in 14 Unitarian authorities, 23 metropolitan boroughs, and 47 district councils. So you could potentially see lots of councils change hands. That's going to be, I think, a big decider, because it's not just going to be about amount of seats, but also how many local councils potentially change hands from Conservative to Labour, or how many of those overall councils the Conservatives might lose control of as well. That will be something else we'll be watching out for. So the first sort of question I think that's worth going over. So who is going to win? In a word, Labour. But that demands some context. All parties naturally manage expectations downwards, but Labour had a fairly poor year in 2019 under Jeremy Corbyn and should be looking to advance strongly from the 31% of the vote it achieved then. Given that Labour is now about 44% up in the opinion polls, it should be making some significant gains in both the seats and overall council control. And that is what we are expecting. That is absolutely what we're expecting. And of course, those gains will come at the expense, by all sounds of it, at the Conservatives. So in particular, Keir Starmer's party should make progress in Swindon, Derby, Plymouth, Darlington, Thanet, and Stoke-on-Trent, and on a national vote share of at least of 570 to over 1,000 seats, gained mostly from the Tories. So, does this mean the Conservatives have lost the next general election? Which I think is going to be the big question. Trust me, after this next local council elections, everyone is going to be asking that same question. Does this mean they have lost the next general election? So, not necessarily. And the Tory spin doctors have already some excuses to hand. They could argue that some of the votes lost amongst this disillusioned Conservatives might come back at the next general election. They could also make a very similar argument about the large numbers who haven't even bothered to vote at all, which, to be honest, it's a local elections. Bear in mind, the turnout is between, 30%. 30% is considered good. The national average is about between 25 and 30%. That's not a lot at all. The narrative about the tough economic decisions to reduce inflation, to be followed by recovery and tax cuts in 2024, will also act as both alibi and salve for Conservatives in a truly dire performance that will prompt the usual national leadership speculation and more chatter about a Boris Johnson comeback. To be honest, highly doubt it, to be honest, at this moment in time. I highly doubt Boris Johnson could mount a serious comeback at this point, especially given after the effects of the committee. And I've said before, depending on how that committee went, I don't think Boris Johnson can mount a comeback. I think he could still cause a lot of trouble after something like this, but mounting a full comeback, no way. No way. So a loss of about 1,000 council seats is to be expected, with setbacks in such places as Surrey, Hertfordshire, and Oxford. And a tiny pattern of anti-Tory tactical voting will be a particular concern at Tory HQ, as it would amplify their prospect of defeat in a general election, as it did in 1997 and 2001. If their projected national vote share dips much below their current poll rating of 29%, there'll be some explaining to do. And oh boy, will there be some explaining to do. That's for sure if that happens. Because remember, after the absolute disaster that was Liz Truss, Rishi Sunak was brought in to be the sensible adult, the safe pair of hands. But so far, this does not seem to be working. And there is certainly a massive sense of unease in the Conservative Party. And remember, Rishi Sunak is having to deal with all these different rebellions from all these different groups. Just today, we've had the watering down of the retained EU law bill from 4,000 to 800. But that still is upsetting the Brexiteers. And even though I had once said, oh, maybe this is the end of the ERG, Rishi Sunak, according to reports, had to send Kimi Badnoch out to a meeting on Monday to the ERG to try and get their approval, which apparently went down like a lead balloon. So I don't think the proclamations of the ERG is dead might be true after all. It could be very, very interesting. So what about smaller parties? That is obviously something we've got to take into consideration. Like I say, Greens normally do very well, as do the Liberal Democrats at local elections. So Vince Cable did well on an anti-Brexit platform in 2019, but Ed Davey should expect a strong showing in the South and Southeast again this year, picking up seats and votes in places such as Surrey and Berkshire and Berkshire. Signs of a revival in old strongholds in the southwest and, of course, the south coast would be very welcome. The same goes for the Greens, who also had a good year in 2019 and have high hopes for gaining control of their first council of Mid-Suffolk. So that'll be something certainly to watch out for. But the other thing I want to sort of make a comment on is, will compulsory voter ID make a difference? I think after the vote elections, you will see big stories about this. How many people got turned away from voting? How many people, or how much of the vote share was lowered because of this? We don't know. And I think this will be a massive, massive scandal and a kerfuffle after this. Certainly, that's very true. So, will compulsory voter ID make a difference? Experts vary on this. Traditionally, such a measure would disproportionately affect older and first-time voters, poorer voters, and those from ethnic minorities, and thus would tend to suppress the Labour vote. However, over the past decade or so, the Conservative vote has trended more towards what used to be called the working class, and even further towards pensioners. So although the net effect will probably be to depress Labour's showing, the practical and marginal differential might be fairly small. That said, there will be some frustrated voters on the 4th of May. So we'll see. We'll see what kind of effect, obviously, this happens. And ultimately, there will be people looking to this sort of after to see how much sort of this did actually affect the vote. We'll see what happens. But ultimately, these local elections going to be fairly interesting, I think. Fairly interesting from a results point of view. And of course, as we said, I think these results are going to be looked at in a microscopic detail, because these are going to be very much a predictor of what will happen potentially at the next general elections. Labour, of course, as we've said, is going to be using this as a trial period. How are their messaging? Is their messaging work? Same for the Liberal Democrats. If there proves to be a Liberal Democrat revival in some of those areas, then potentially that will also cause trouble for the Conservatives, because, again, that's their patch, their area that they have lost. So it's more losses that they cannot sort of afford. But we'll see what happens. Already, these local elections are shaping up to be very interesting. Certainly the ID now. Unfortunately, there's already a campaign by the Electoral Reform Society to try and highlight just how bad these are, to try and sort of get these things campaigned with these laws removed. But I already got to say this, guys. Why now? Why were you not? Although, to be honest, they were, but it annoys me the fact that this type of campaign is only being picked up now, guys. You know, if you are joining us at this late stage, being frustrated about this ID, welcome to the party, guys. You're only a couple of months late, but hey, at least you're turning up finally. Welcome. So, as always, thank you very much. And of course, we're looking forward to May the 4th as well, May the 5th, shall we say, to see what the results are going to be. And of course, we shall be having a look and deep diving, having a look to see what all these experts are saying, what the Conservatives are saying, what the Labour are saying, what the Lib Dems are saying, what all the other parties are saying. We'll have to wait and see until May the 5th. But like I say, going to be an interesting results day for sure. But as always, thank you very much for watching. And of course, as always, remember to hit the like, share, and of course, subscribe if you are new to the channel as well. And of course, links down below to Patreon, etc. All down below. You know the deal by now. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.